Joining me this morning. And today we're going to look at is one of the real fascinating concepts, I think, theologically very interesting one, the idea of loneliness versus being alone, and how the two are different. It's interesting because one of the first warnings, one of the first concerns in the Bible actually is loneliness. Isn't that interesting, right? It predates the famous temptation scene, et cetera, et cetera. It's the first time where God's really going like, yeah, this is what you got to be aware of. Pretty interesting. So lonely obviously has a pretty significant pretty significant pretty significant role in our lives and how we handle it. And I want to start with this. Dorothy Day said, "We've all known the long loneliness." And I certainly have found that to be true. Most people battle loneliness at least some of the time. And I know for me, I have been surprised as a pastor more than once with people where I thought like, we all may feel lonely, but not them. And then dollars to donuts, they they show up, feeling alone, feeling loneliness. So just interesting, right? It seems to be an almost universal human experience, though I'm sure there are some people who don't have that, but it seems like something that's really significant. Again, I want to be clear, like first warning given in the Bible, which is fascinating. So here's where that shows up. This is Genesis 2, verse 18, chapter 2, verse 18. And Jehovah said, "It is not good for the human being to be alone, for the human to be alone. Let us make him an aid that seems to be his." And this is talking about Adam, and it's the creation of Eve. Again, we see those as metaphors, things that are created in us. And certainly, just an aside, certainly not anything that subjugates women to men in any way, shape, or form, like the men came first or anything like that. That's just not how we read it. What's fascinating about this, folks, as I was thinking about it this morning, is that there's this clear warning. Like, it's not good. Loneliness is not good. And this is talking about loneliness because there's plenty of other places in the Bible, places where Emmanuel Swedenborg points out where aloneness is actually held as a virtue. Israel has lived securely alone. That's Deuteronomy. Rise, go up to a nation at rest, living securely. No double doors, no bar in the gate, because they live alone. That's Jeremiah. So we see all these other places where this idea of living alone is great, is greeted as a laudatory thing. So that's interesting, right? Because these words, we can trip up over them, and this stuff's written back in the 1700s. They don't have the same language that we do. I think what it's speaking to here, folks, is that there's a big difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Now, the feeling loneliness, like that loneliness, that is really a challenging time. And we think about times where we feel true loneliness, and it has this way of sort of bending in on itself. And when we feel alone, we tend to feel more and more and more alone. And in this complete paradox that only somehow human beings can pull off, as we feel more loneliness and we feel more alone, we isolate more and more. Go figure. At least that's my experience personally, and that's my experience with a lot of people I know. That the antidote's right there, but we choose more and more to just sort of go it alone, and not a healthy way. That's pretty interesting. And I was thinking, well, how does God handle this loneliness thing? Well, it's interesting because it seems to be that God's call with all of this is comfort, is this comfort, and as well as this just look at my note here, this comfort, and as we go through this challenge, it's held as a challenge, and God is there to comfort. And we see it with Jesus later on in the New Testament. We see it all over, where there's these feelings of loneliness, and God shows up as the comforter. That's really interesting, and that's really powerful. And then there's this other part of like being alone, but in a positive sense. I think most of us, some of the time at least, cherish kind of being alone on occasion, having alone time, having quiet. I know I certainly do. I really try to spend a day out of the week essentially just being alone, because that to me personally feels very much like Sabbath. It feels like just a rest. It feels like stepping outside of a model that's just constantly asking how productive we are. And that seems to be a very important spiritual model, goes back to the Sabbath. So interesting, right? Like the Sabbath was, in a certain sense, a very alone time. Now, people didn't take that just sort of as a hermitage just by themselves. It was a time for connection with family, but it was time where you decreased your social circle. We could definitely say that. And I was thinking about that with aloneness. We see God as kind of giving us a call to that, actually, this call to quiet, this call to something that's quieter. And actually that becomes a resource in our souls, which is interesting. So friends, I don't know where you are on that spectrum. And boy, this is where I wish we could have a broader conversation, because it sure is fascinating to me. But it appears so interesting, right? Like, are we feeling lonely, or are we feeling a desire to be alone? And knowing that those two, granted, they are similar in a lot of ways, but they have different energy to them. And just I don't know, like today, just be aware of that energy, And if you're feeling loneliness, just I think the thing we have to be aware of there is the propensity we have to isolate. And that's no good. And yet, if we're feeling like just too much is going on, and we're actually feeling, yeah, I do need some alone time, by all means, do it. By all means, do it, and have a little quiet. Let God speak to you there. Find some comfort in that. See what shows up, because it'll probably be some pretty good stuff. So just notice that, folks, right? Just notice that, and just see how that plays out in your life today. Again, that idea of loneliness versus being alone. If you're feeling a little lonely, see how God can show up for you there as a comfort, and take some steps. And if you really feel that call to be alone today, by all means, do it, my friends. By all means, do it. All right. So let's go ahead now, folks, and do our little meditation, our little prayer, our little blessing, and then we'll say hello to folks on social media. So with that, friends, let's get a little breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, friends, let's take a look at what the comments are. And just a little kind of, I think, pretty cool aside to all this is one of the fascinating observations is this is from Richard Rohr, actually. He said you can't truly enter a group until you've truly learned how to actually be alone. And that's kind of interesting. Not loneliness, not that word, but that idea that we have to sort of have a wholeness in ourselves before we can go out there and connect with other people, which is kind of fascinating to me. All right, friends, let's say hello to the people who are joining us today. Patricia, great to have you joining us today and to see that heart there. Martha, tough anniversary day. Uh, yeah, let's see. Yeah, Martha, I'd love to actually, hear a little more about that. If you want to send me a note. Tough anniversary day for me. No greater loneliness than grieving a loved one. But then that's also when you're closest to God. Aloneness is close to Godness. Wow, there's a sermon right there. Mm, that's beautiful, Martha. Thank you. Kim writes, "Good morning, everyone, and good morning to you, Kim." Marcus, good morning to you, buddy. Paige, good morning. Hope you're having a great time, my friend. Sherry, good morning from beautiful Petter John State Park in Arkansas. That's pretty fun. And just Sherry, there were some congregants who were thinking about the RV life, and I said, I've got someone who you could talk to. We've got a number of folks who do that, which is fun. Jen, good morning to you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. And Linda, who's also traveling out west there. Linda, very good morning to you too, my friend. So folks, yeah, I really do. That's a very striking comment, Martha. Aloneness is close to Godness. It really is. It's kind of interesting how Sabbath all works into it and God showing up as comforter when we are feeling lonely. Just a lot there. I was starting to tease at this morning for this morning's little bit. I was thinking, dang, every time I would write something down, it'd be like, and then there's a sermon on that side, the sermon. So I don't know. Maybe one of these days we turn it into a whole series because it's kind of interesting, well, fascinating stuff, right? Fascinating parts of the human condition. All right, my dear friends. Well, listen, God bless. Have a terrific day. Any way we can give you a hand, please reach out. Would be more than happy to. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.